Back to strategic planning, which is exciting, a big deal. We're so excited to share the results of this year-long. I can't believe it's been a year, but a strategic planning process, which, as you know, we titled Championing Our Future. I have shared the 22-page document of the final draft of the strategic plan with you prior. You've all had access to that. That is also in our board docs. And so today we look forward to just sharing some highlights of the strategic plan. I'm going to ask the group, as we've done with most of our presentations, if you'll hold your questions to the end. We've got a slide at the end where we've got access and an opportunity to ask questions as we go. And I've got control of the clicker. So our strategic plan, I said that this is an exciting culmination. I am incredibly proud of the final product. And throughout the presentation, I will share how we have carefully crafted and chosen each word of the plan, including our mission, our vision, our values, alongside our community. This truly was a collaborative process. We have been purposeful about recognizing the uniqueness of each voice and intentional about finding ways that we can collectively work together toward our future. Through the process, we developed the theme of our Bexley DNA, and we've shared this in a couple of conversations with staff and with some of our PTO booster groups. One thing that we heard leading into the creation of this plan was we didn't want a cookie cutter plan or an experience. And I'm really proud that I don't think you'll find a plan like this in other districts. You're not going to see this sort of thing in, if you went on Chat GPT, James, you're not going to find what we have here. So we're really proud of its uniqueness to Bexley, and the voices that we received throughout the entire process was really important for us. Before we get into the plan, it is important for me to start by thanking some folks, especially our students. Our students shared strong and passionate voices, perspectives, and insight. They are the reason why we strive to champion our future. They are our future, and their voices were crucial to the authenticity of this process and the end product we are sharing this evening. Their contributions can be felt throughout the entire plan, which is an important outcome for our team. Of anything that I've heard through this process, it's been that. The impact of our students from the start of this process to the end of the end of the process, especially in our subcommittee group work. I loved hearing from community members, adults, non-staff members, because staff members see the magic every day. We see what students are capable of. Parents and guardians, we know what our own children can do, but when you put them into a setting that's unique, kind of like we see James doing, it's powerful. And so I kept having conversations with folks that were part of those subcommittees that said, oh my goodness, the best part of this process has been the voice of our students. So that's powerful and that's important. It also would not have been possible without the tremendous amount of time, energy, and support from our administrators, our staff, as well as the countless parents, guardians, board members, and community members that selflessly gave their time to participate from start to finish. What you see in front of you is a list of those who chose to serve on our Superintendent Strategic Planning Advisory Group, the SSPAC. This group guided our mission, vision, and value work. Our subcommittee work participants, they were there to define and refine the plan, and also our steering committee participants who oversaw the entire process. Also, a huge shout out to our friends from BQI, Big Questions Institute, for their accessibility and their support throughout. Really thankful for Will and Homa and Brad and Azeb. Really thankful. I didn't know when we started this journey what it would look like, and the responsiveness is quite impressive. And they are still working alongside us to support the work, and we're really thankful. Hours and hours were spent in the collaboration with this group as they worked with us to collaboratively choose each word, even the tenses of these words, and how they paired together. Their careful attention to detail and commitment to the process and to each other and our community as a whole should be applauded. Additionally, special thank you to our 4 subcommittee leaders. We've got Dr. Harley Williams with us. We've got Casey Cosgray. We've got Jason Cottle, and Marcellus Braxton is on line with us. They have done a masterful job, and it is unlike anything I've probably seen through a process like this. I've been part of plenty of strategic planning processes. They hit it out of the park. And when I say that, I mean that. They put countless hours into it. They worked alongside collaboratively with our community, and I'm really impressed and really thankful for their work. So a huge thank you. There are also hundreds of names that are not on this list. They participated in surveys, feedback forms, questionnaires, conversations throughout the process as well, and we want to thank them. It is what makes this plan reflective of us as a district, and it is what we heard from so many and wove their experiences into this plan to champion our future. Also want to comment, thank you to Mark Frank. Just met with Mark Frank again. Mark Frank sat on one of our subcommittees. Lots of great conversations, especially as we plan what that looks like in the next phase. We're going to identify the who and the when and the prioritizations. We want to work alongside Mark and our staff to make sure that it fits with the work that we've committed to doing. Huge shout out to Carla Croswell, my administrative assistant. She is a superstar, cannot fathom the work without her. She set up all of the conversations, all of the meetings, all of the protocols, all the things that we needed. She did it flawlessly without complaint. Carol Taylor stepped up constantly throughout as we've tried to communicate and keep people updated. Our website, I think, is a really important resource. Gianna has been a big support for that as well. Even today, Carol was in all the buildings trying to capture interviews of our students so that we can roll this out in the fall. Just a collective effort, and we're really, really thankful. When we began the process, we knew it needed to be a living document that somehow embodied all of the individuals in our community and in our schools, our history, and also who we are becoming. We could not have done this, as I just mentioned, without the time, energy, vulnerability, and availability of our students, staff, families, and community members mentioned earlier who weighed in on the process. Listening and talking with our community was a critical first step in discovering who we are as a community, what is important to us, and what we want to become. Similar to the process of sequencing DNA, we researched, examined, and sorted through all of the input and feedback to come to our core tenets of what makes Bexley City Schools unique and what is important to us as a community and an organization. We were intentional in our transparency throughout this process, and you can find this critical feedback posted on our website. We've got another meeting in the morning where we're going to update and upload all of the things that we're going to share with you this evening as well. As you look on this slide, this just goes back to those things that we talked about. You've seen this before. Phase one was critical. We had 27 individual meetings, 22 focus group, 105 responses, 3,000 data points, and all of that helped drive the work that we're going to talk about today. So let's dive in. After all the conversations and discussions, it was clear to us that we largely agreed upon three things, which became our mission statement: learn with curiosity, demonstrate kindness, and embrace equity. It was also evident that in order to fulfill these three core actions, incorporating diversity, equity, inclusion into every single action along the way would be necessary, and we will discuss the components of that concept a little bit later. Not only are these three statements inclusive of our goals, our challenges, and ambitions, but they're also declarative, simple, and easy to remember. All of these are important in a mission statement that is designed to galvanize us each and every day to focus on our ability to champion our future. Learn with curiosity, demonstrate kindness, embrace equity. These are essential to us as DNA. In other words, as our core, it is who we are in Bexley. These are the non-negotiables. We must be and represent these three ideals in every action, every decision, every lesson, and every interaction. Every single day, our students and staff will learn with curiosity, demonstrate kindness, and embrace equity, and we will strive to do all of those to the absolute best of our ability. We should represent these three characteristics so clearly in all that we do that it becomes a distinguishing feature for us here in Bexley City Schools. So much so that when you think of Bexley, you do not think only of Bexley Blue or the Lions, or that we are an exceptional district. You will also think of curious learners, kindness, and equity. These characteristics should be visible, recognizable, and noticeable in everything that we do. Our values further describe our DNA and how we will be authentic to our identity as individuals who learn with curiosity, demonstrate kindness, and embrace equity. These values are necessary if we are to be the best version of ourselves and the best version of Bexley City Schools. And so, as you see on the diagram, we will value equity, inclusion, respect, empathy, well-being, integrity, and responsibility as we teach, as we create and review policy, as we learn and grow, as we have conflicts or disagreements, and as we continue to become champions. Acknowledging and owning our DNA is just the first step. Once we know who we are and what we are capable of, we can begin to dream about what is yet to come. Our vision represents our community's expectations, desires, and dreams for who we want to be. These vision statements are aspirational and hopeful, but they are not unattainable. They are absolutely possible, and because they are possible, we can lean on them whenever we face a crossroads or a challenge. We must keep each of these at the forefront. Some say what gets written down gets done, and that's exactly what we're doing with the vision statement for our process. It will push us to champion our future each and every single day. And it leads us to our next phase of championing our future. The daily actions we take and how we align them to our vision stay true to our values and focus on our mission. The vision of our schools clearly states that we champion curiosity, kindness, and equity so that our school are places where creativity, innovation, and critical thinking flourish, teaching and learning are culturally responsive and relevant to a changing world, diversity of perspectives, lived experiences, and identities are reflected in programs, policies, and practices that foster inclusion and equity. Everyone feels safe and supported. We nurture belonging, joy, and an ethic of care, and where students have the academic, social, and emotional supports to define and experience success and to recognize that failure is a natural part of learning. While gene mapping or DNA mapping can tell a detailed story of where you've been, your ancestry and your biological history, and warning signs for the future, we need a wellness plan or a map to tell us how to get where we want to be. The map tells us what we can do to embody our DNA and how we will advance the goals to achieve our vision for the future. It also tells us where we have been by identifying areas of improvement, concern, or focus. One of the ways we are embodying our DNA of learn with curiosity, demonstrate kindness, and embrace equity and our values is by weaving in or integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion into each component of the map forward. It cannot be a standalone item because it is essential to who we are as individuals and a community and the vision we have for our future. Marcellus Braxton, our leader of diversity, equity, and inclusion subcommittee. He was the leader of our subcommittee. He is here online virtually to share some insight into the work behind the DEI subcommittee and the important decision to weave DEI into the entirety of the plan. Marcellus?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fine. I apologize for not being able to see you all in person, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you virtually. Thank you, Dr. Fine, for the opportunity to talk about the role of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee. I had the opportunity to chair the subcommittee, but I think first and foremost, the credit should go to all the students, staff, community members, and alumni who dedicated hours of their time to this process. The DEI subcommittee operated like the other three subcommittees in that we had frequent meetings and we created emerging themes. We were also cognizant that many of our themes were going to intersect with other subcommittees, and we wanted to embrace that possibility. For our subcommittee, we were able to identify three themes, and they were equitable and inclusive learning environment, equitable and inclusive community, meaning intentionally creating the conditions for all students to thrive. And then third is processes and structures that build belonging and safety. And within those three themes, we looked at short-term, long-term, and ongoing options. We also operated with the intent that any and all themes, goals, and objectives were intended to foster an experience of belonging and dignity for every member of the Bexley City School District community, and we mean that very broadly. When we were able to complete that process of meeting, we had intentional conversations about how we can ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion was embedded throughout this entire process. And so it was ultimately determined that our DEI findings should not be standalone, but should be embedded in the work of all the other subcommittees, because as I mentioned before, they intersect. And also the other subcommittees directly mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they were passionate about ensuring that diversity, equity, and inclusion lens played a role in their process as well. So as you're going to see in the final strategic plan, there's not going to be a diversity, equity, inclusion section, because diversity, equity, inclusion should play a role in every single part of the strategic plan, every single bullet. And we also have the Equity in Education Board policy and the Evolving Equity Plan to help guide our decision-making when it comes to equity. They can act as safeguards to ensure that equity is prioritized in our implementation. And so I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to share some comments about the work that the DEI subcommittee has done. And I look forward to any questions you may have that I will be present for at the end of Dr. Fry's presentation. I'm going to pass it back.
Thank you, Marcellus. We'll get into a little bit more of that detail. Appreciate the insight. Now we're going to get into where we've been. What can we do to be known as the district that learns with curiosity, demonstrates kindness, and embraces equity, and how we will achieve our vision. Culture is the foundation for all other work. That is why it is listed first on our map. Teaching and learning is next, because it is at the core of what we do. We teach and learn. That is how we grow. Followed by facilities, because where our culture and teaching and learning happens is vitally important to how it happens and how it develops over time. As mentioned earlier, with the insight and input of our subcommittees of students, teachers, staff, families, and community members, we have thoughtfully and purposefully considered how diversity, equity, and inclusion play a role in each of these three focus areas, their goals, and subsequent action steps. Before I ask our focus area leaders to provide a more thorough overview of the specific goals and advancement objectives, I want to reiterate that this is simply a map. It gives us an idea of what is to come, but we will continue to rely on new data, research, staff, student, and community engagement and feedback, along with the thoughtful guidance and leadership of our board. We will want to make sure we reach consensus for the steps needed to implement the plan. Building and keeping our community's trust is a priority, and we will work to do that throughout the implementation of this plan over the next 3 years. As I mentioned earlier, this plan is not possible without our 4 subcommittee leaders. You've just heard from Marcellus, and we're going to hear from the other leaders. And we're going to start with Jason Cottle, Mr. Cottle, our new secondary principal, regarding culture.
Thank you, Dr. Fine. Very excited to share this. The involvement of the community, the process was just wonderful. And I saw that within my own subgroup, the support that we got from BQI all throughout, their availability offline outside of meetings was a huge help as we navigated this. I'm really proud to be a part of the culture subcommittee because we believe that this is the foundation for all other aspects of the strategic plan. Defining culture is a huge task and in just a few months, but our team quickly realized that our work really needed to be driven by curiosity. We need to ask questions more than come up with answers. And so those questions revolve around both what's going on in the school and what's going on in the community. When those outside the school are well and thriving, the same will be true for those inside of the school. And so we set these 3 goals. Our first goal is to ensure that the experience of school fosters physical, mental, and emotional well-being while supporting the district's mission of toward curiosity, kindness, and equity. The impetus for this goal is the idea that we must prioritize the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of our students and staff in order for sustainable and significant change to be made. I would say that one of the most significant shifts in education that I've seen in my 20 years has been wellness as a byproduct of the education system to it really being a key driver of a strong educational system. We have to focus on wellness in all the ways that shows up in school. So to accomplish that, we have a couple of sub-points here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at how we're using time. And if that is the use of time is aligned to the well-being of students and staff. We heard from our students throughout that they have a lot of things on their plate. And so we need to examine, are things, is that the way it should be? Or are there things that we need to consider, things that we can do differently to make sure that their experience is more well-rounded holistically? We need to find out if where we are investing our time is getting the results we want, and if there's enough time to do all of the things that we say we're going to do. Next, we want to continue our assessment of the opportunities that exist for students and eliminate any possible barriers that might get in the way of students pursuing their interest. Dr. Baker already mentioned an element of that tonight when he spoke in his report about the evaluation of how teams are selected and just making sure that that process is well defined and understood by all involved. Our second goal is to promote, monitor, and sustain students' healthy relationship with technology. This is a very different school age than when any of us were in school, and technology plays such a significant role. And it has this unique characteristic of the way it carries over from home to school in a way that very few things do. And so the committee believes that it is time for an examination of how students utilize technology and what impact that is having on both their learning and their wellness. I'm really proud of the work that we did a few years back in establishing rules for personal devices during the school day, because it was grounded in students' mental health. Since then, this work has been utilized in at least a dozen other districts across Ohio. By involving stakeholders from across the community in an examination of the existing evidence about the impact of various technologies on student well-being, we will be able to craft a technology use policy that promotes healthy practices. Continue to educate ourselves and the larger community will help us work together and allow us to make educated decisions about technology use in and out of the school building. And our final goal, our third goal, is to foster a community culture where each student can realize success and feel a strong sense of belonging. Our committee believes that an unhealthy culture of competition, sometimes referred to as achievement culture, has become too prevalent in our schools. While we do not believe that competition and achievement are bad things at all, we do see a narrowing definition of success as an unintended consequence, which is negatively impacting our students. In order to meet this goal, we're looking to integrate and articulate social emotional learning standards into all areas of the curriculum. When we state that our mission is to embrace kindness, we are raising the bar from simply asking students and staff not to be mean or hurtful to each other. Kindness is not passive. It is a decision that has to be made each and every moment of the day, and our students and staff will need lots of support and encouragement to live that out. Each board meeting, just like tonight, you hear from Dr. Fine about the exciting ways that we can recognize students. I'm really encouraged by the wider range of ways that we are recognizing students for the success of the Career Center, for their success through athletics, performing groups. We have an art signing day. We have military recognition day. We're recognizing students in all kinds of ways, and we want to continue and expand on that. While all the recognition won't and shouldn't look the same, we should find every reason to celebrate students. I was like, what are you guys calling for? Like, what am I missing out on here? All right. No, you're good. You're good. I know it's, and it's so cold in here. If we could just turn the temperature up a little bit, that'd be great. So this plan before you, it's ambitious and challenging, but I've always believed that Bexley can achieve anything that we prioritize. Thank you. And
Yeah.
I introduce the next speaker. How
Perfect.
this works.
Take it. Thank you.
Ms. Cosgrave is going to come talk about teaching and learning.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Rarely do I do this, but I had planned what I wanted to say, and then I've scribbled all over it because there's so much to say. So I have no idea what I'm going to say because it's all good stuff. When I interviewed for this position, it was almost about a year ago. I asked the question back, can I see a copy of the strategic plan? I don't know if you remember that, but they said, oh, we're going to be engaging in that process next year. So here I am coming full circle a little bit. So that leads me to being honored to facilitate and contribute to the Teaching and Learning Committee. Our team brought together a wide range of perspectives. It was challenging at times, but that challenge also created some wonderful outcomes for us. We had students who had a strong voice and who were demanding change so that they could have more engaged and more meaningful approaches to learning. Our teachers had a vision for providing our students with the best education possible. And our parents were there partnering with us to make sure we were preparing our students for this unknown world moving forward. So these are our 3 teaching and learning goals, and I'll go into them in a little bit more detail here. So our first goal focuses on our continued efforts to meet the needs of each and every student in our learning community. To do this, 1, we need to expand our capacity and our understanding of equitable and culturally responsive teaching and learning practices. We already have many good pockets of practice, but it needs to be widespread, broad, and deep in every single classroom. So this is our work ahead here. Secondly, we need to build a comprehensive multi-tiered systems of preventative and responsive supports. And then we need to be intentional in our planning to make sure that we are proactive and looking at where students are and plan to get them to that next phase. Our second goal is to expand our teacher and student agency. We need to empower our students. We want them to take responsibility for their learning, to be able to go, as James is doing, to go to Ohio State University and major in financing and maybe be Kyle's replacement, of course, once he retires. So who knows what that may bring, but we want our students and teachers to drive this education. And with that, we're going to lean into our new mission where we're going to learn with curiosity. We need to embed more creative, student-centered and innovative engagements throughout the entire K-12 experiences. Our kindergarten students need to have agency as well as our 12th grade students. We plan to develop key learning experiences to provide culminating events so that we can showcase this growth in critical thinking over time at certain times around the experience. Lastly, our third goal is going to focus on creating space for all students to engage in learning opportunities that are meaningful, relevant, and most of all, prepares them for life after Bexley City Schools. Our alumni voice was very, very strong in this during phase 1, and we carried that voice with us throughout this phase as well. They suggested more career connections and exploratory experiences, and the emphasis on mentorship, service learning, and internship opportunities to help guide them into their future. And I know the connections that we have in Bexley, the Bexley Education Foundation, all of our alumni contacts, we have the right resources to provide an outstanding opportunity for every one of our students. So there's a lot of work to do, but we're excited about that work. I think the real work begins now in the teaching and learning area, and I'm looking forward to continuing to engage in that work. I will now hand it over to Dr. Williams. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the work of our subcommittee, and before I begin, I'm sure they're not watching, but I'd like to thank all of our members of our subcommittee. They were fantastic, and I've always tried to surround myself around very smart people, and I certainly did this time. And James was on our team, and I think he would attest that our students were fantastic. We had experts and expertise in the field and finance. Kyle was on our committee. It was fun, and I think I made a few new friends that I didn't even really know in the community. So I appreciate the opportunity to work through this process as well. And in particular, I'd like to thank Mr. Brad Choate from BQI. The guy's phenomenal, a process thinker, how he moves and how he thinks. He's remarkable, and I appreciate his guidance.
And I'm going to interrupt too. He's also a board member in his community, and he brought a really important perspective in all of those conversations from the lens of a board member, which I thought was really powerful. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. He deserves a lot of credit. I have a lot of respect for him. Our team developed 3 goals that I'm going to be happy to share with you tonight. And a little bit before I got up here, I sent each of you a little presentation. Because the first goal we're going to talk about is the need for a strategic plan. I mean, we those of you that are on the Facilities Advisory Committee, you might recall that was a recommendation we got earlier in the year. The Finance Committee we spoke with said, yes, you should go talk to your because of the amount of money we're spending on general fund for these things at this time for this process. And in the work with the community, we heard the same message. So we feel very good in saying that we have a strong and we have a lot of momentum around this in our community right now and support for a master facilities process. What I wanted to do though is that my daughter's renovating her house, right? And in part of the renovation, underneath their stairs, they found 2 baseball cards. And one was a 1945 baseball card commemorating the St. Louis Browns versus St. Louis Cardinals World Series. Anyway, and so I started thinking at first, how can I tie baseball into this? Like, in 1922, when school started, Ty Cobb was playing baseball. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a baseball card in our school someplace, a Ty Cobb right now that I only knew about, only I knew about it. But I didn't do that because I thought that'd just be my indulging area. So what I did is I sent you a picture, a couple of things I want to point out. And one, I sent it, I went and Googled, what does the classroom look like in 1921? What does the classroom look like in 1927? Not necessarily in our buildings, but one thing you'll see, and I think I'm excited about the work that Casey's going to do, those pictures don't look too different sometimes what you see in our schools today, right? But you look at and I said, well, what would the teachers drive to school when they were working there? And you can take a look at the cars that they would have driven in 1922, 1927 when Cassingham was built. So I just put that up just to be different, I guess, and indulge me with that. So the first goal, like I said, we did talk about the finance planning committee recommended we go back to our committee, the facilities committee. We went with the community, and there was a strong consensus we moved forward. Well, 1922, let's go through the ages of our buildings. 1922, Montrose was built. Warren Harding was our president. 1927, Cassingham was built. Calvin Coolidge was our president. 1932, the high school was built, and Herbert Hoover was our president. 52, Maryland Avenue was built. Harry Truman was our president. And finally, in 1969, the middle school was built, connecting the high school and Cassingham Elementary, and Lyndon Johnson was our president. The costs associated with its repairs and our learning needs of today cause us to believe, and I emphasize again, costs and learning needs cause us to believe that it's time now to plan for the next 100 years of facilities for the Bexley City Schools. Takes us to our second goal. Our second goal is to equip current classrooms and common spaces by installing and utilizing aesthetically pleasing furniture. In addition, we recommend we explore alternative facilities and buildings to support the evolving needs of Bexley Schools. What we kept hearing throughout in our conversations is that we don't have a lot of space. Our elementary schools are built on plots of land that are small compared to what it should be as far as acreage and size, things like that. We don't even really know if it can be done, but one of the things that they talked about is, could we set aside a pot of money so when these opportunities come up, we could purchase a building that could be used for this, or a piece of land that could be used for athletic purposes down the road, because there's just not a lot of it here, and the land that we have is very expensive. So that was, and then the idea about taking what we have. Our team at school, John Eikenberry, Brett, Bobby, and their teams, our buildings are, it's like the old Pantheons. They're beautiful buildings and they're well taken care of. But when you get behind the curtain, you see things, and the expenses it takes to fix and repair and replace things that are over 100 years old. We can't let that fool us into thinking that we don't need to do that kind of work. And a lot of the work we're going to talk about is going to require voter passage. And that's whenever you start asking for bond money and things like that, there'll be a decision made. But we also wanted to say, what can we do now with our buildings? What can we do with furniture? What can we do with safety and security, as we'll talk about here in a little bit? What can we do that's transferable? So if we do a renovation project, well, let's start thinking about how furniture look like. Do we want our classrooms to be equipped like the pictures that I sent you earlier? Or are there better ways that align with what the teaching and learning committee is going to come up with that facilitates that type of process? So that brings us down to our third goal. The third goal is that safety is always a priority in the bedrock, which we got to build everything off of. And our subcommittee recommends that we identify underutilized areas that could be transformed into community spaces to help what Jason mentioned earlier about that sense of belonging. Kids are social, and we're all social animals. we have to create schools and environments that allow that to happen and finding spaces for that to occur. So we're constantly looking at how can we make this larger area into a more of a social gathering place where students can learn and socialize. And as we all know, learning is a social event in itself. And specifically, since most of our buildings predate current building codes, we recommend that we conduct an ADA audit and respond to the recommendations by completing renovations to meet each student's needs. And the final subcomponent of our third recommendation is to implement identified systems and equipment to enhance safety and security measures. So those are constant and ongoing things that we are recommending and we put in our plan. And I thank you for your time.
So a huge thank you again to the four subcommittee leaders. It's funny that as I sit here and try and do the math of how many hours you all led the work from planning, prepping, meeting, well over 24 hours worth of work, and you condensed it into 3 minutes. So we appreciate that and understand that there's a lot more meat that is in the larger document, but I think you did a fantastic job of summarizing the work and appreciate, but it does not go unnoticed that the work that you've done. They also served on our steering committee. Steering committee was our four subcommittee leaders, myself, Ms. Powers, and Kumi Walker, who's a community member. And we met several times to ensure that the plan matched what we were hearing from feedback. We know that there is a cost associated with improvement and growth. We've done our best to project the cost, and Kyle has been an important member of that conversation and has factored in these projected costs into the 5-year forecast, which he's going to share a little bit later this evening. These are the costs that we expect to see, and obviously these are projected. First and foremost, we heard from our staff that they are ready and willing to do what it takes to improve or advance what they are already doing, but that work takes time and effort. In recognition of that, we are thinking creatively about ways to designate ongoing staff meeting time to target strategic planning initiatives. Part of advancing and championing our future will undoubtedly require district, building, and department level professional development. So we have also estimated those costs as well as potential costs associated with any audits and explorations that you see in the plan. Additionally, we are building in additional staff compensation for the time it will take outside of contractual hours to do what is necessary to accomplish our goals and vision for the future. That's a really important piece that we have heard throughout the process. We have a ton of staff that sat in all of those hours, 24 plus hours, as you talk about the planning and the work behind the scenes. We want to show that the value for that work. Finally, as part of our facilities goal, it is recommended that we conduct another community-led and driven process alongside expert school and educational architects and construction professionals to assess the physical state of our facilities that Harley talked about, how those are being used to advance teaching and learning. Those costs are also estimated on the chart. It is important to note that we have staggered these costs out. We must be purposeful and deliberate in our actions. Not all the goals or advancement objectives we have will be or can be accomplished in year one, nor do we believe they should be. We will continue to work collaboratively with our staff, community, and board to determine needs based off of future findings. 2 to go. You're getting there. We are excited about the direction and the scope of this strategic plan for the next 3 years. And now, pending the board's approval, the real work to implement it begins, as Casey mentioned. Alongside our equity plan, the process and document can become a catalyst to a shift toward a more accessible, inclusive, and equitable Bexley City Schools. Over the next few months, we will be working internally to determine the groups and individuals who will be responsible for working through each goal and advancement objective within the plan. We will need to identify the timelines for each goal, as well as the interim milestones and the tools and metrics we will use to elevate our progress and our results. And we'll need to create a plan to engage our community to introduce and build support for our work moving forward and to communicate our progress on a regular basis. In fact, this work has already begun as we have brainstormed as a leadership team alongside our principals to begin mapping out the implementation and the prioritization of the plan. I see the plan as a living document that represents who we are, who we want to be, and our goals for the future. It is the culmination of a year-long process to listen and learn from each other and to set our shared priorities. Continued collaboration with our staff, students, and families will be essential to the realization and success of the plan. Change is inevitable. Change can be challenging. There is no doubt. And we want to build upon the amazing things that are already happening within our schools. We need to make sure that the areas that we enhance are going to lead directly to us achieving our goals and realizing the vision that we have set, and we will work closely with our staff to support this process. We remain committed to collaboration, community, and to our mission to learn with curiosity, demonstrate kindness, and embrace equity. As I started the presentation, I'd like to end the presentation. This is a large undertaking. It could not be done without the folks that we mentioned earlier who served on subcommittees, who served on committees, who served on our steering committee, but most importantly, the folks that really participated in phase one. We have incredible feedback that guided us throughout the process, and we're so thankful for those who participated. These are just a few snapshots of that work, and it led us to what you've heard tonight and what you've seen in front of you. So a huge thank you. And at this point, we will take any questions or comments, and we appreciate your patience with us.